What would make this fair for her to compete, for those who are competing against her?
Who is her? A.B. Hernandez is a male who identifies as a female.
Yeah, stand on business.
What would be fair is to have Hernandez competing in the male category. What he's been told is not actually reality. He cannot become a girl. What he can do is compete in the male category.
All right, here we go.
That's a boy! That's a boy! That's a man, man!
I'm gonna listen. I don't have to. I have a right to speak truth. Boys are boys, girls are girls. This son does not belong competing against those girls. Period. What a coward of a woman you are allowing that. What a coward and telling girls to go and compete against a boy? How embarrassing. You're a mother. You're a mother. Stand up like a mother. I am a mother. I'm protecting girls. You want a boy. How many people support the boy competing against the girls? Nobody. Don't tell me to shut up. I was respectful to you. Okay.
Of course not.
Be a real mom.
She's instigating.
No, you're not. You're a coward. Your mental illness is on your son.
The uproar over transgender athletes competing in girls' youth sports is clouding the weekend state track and field championships in California. Protesters there are expected to rally against A.B. Hernandez, a transgender high school student who will compete after winning the girls' long jump and triple jump. Her advance to the championship meet and the public backlash that it's prompted has led state high school sports officials to change the rules. They will now allow additional athletes to qualify for the state meet if they'd been bumped out of a spot by a transgender girl. The controversy even led President Donald Trump to threaten to withhold federal funding from California for allowing her to compete. Let's take you now live to Clovis, California, where the meet is set to take place with CNN's Julia Vargas. So, Julia, what can we expect from today's competition?
Well, Boris, it's going to be an interesting award ceremony if AB places in any of the 3 events that she's qualified to compete in. Not only will those extra slots be added for the cisgender students that don't make it, they will also have extra medals, basically duplicate medals for the student that would have placed had she not been there. The Federation will also give the medal, they say, to a biological female student athlete who would have earned the specific placement on the podium. They will also be awarded a medal for that place. Now, California has allowed transgender student athletes in the high school level to participate in the gender that they identify with since 2013. But now the Justice Department is taking a look, investigating that law to see if it is a violation of Title IX, the federal law that bans sex-based discrimination for schools that receive any kind of federal funding. Governor Gavin Newsom said that these changes that the Federation has made, they are already a reasonable compromise, even though we know that in March, he did say that the participation of trans girls in sports is raising an issue of fairness. And that concern, it is echoed by parents, especially here in the Clovis area, where we heard from an organization called the California Family Council. They are a conservative organization, and they say that basically these new policies, they don't go far enough, and that they are ignoring the, quote, fundamental biological differences between men and women. Take a listen.
And joining us now is attorney Julie Hamill, who is the president and founder of the California Justice Center. Her group opposes transgender athletes competing in girls' youth sports. Julie, thanks for being with us. What do you think of the rule change in this specific case?
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate CNN bringing me on to talk about this issue. And I want to be clear that my position isn't that I oppose any athletes. I want to see Title IX, which was enshrined in law in 1970s in the United States of America, in order to give equal opportunity to women and girls in educational programs.
Yeah, and to do that, you have to be opposed to transgender athletes competing against girls and women. Like, I don't understand why people do the politically correct pussyfooting, but the CNN reporter is 100% right on her stance. You believe there's nothing wrong with saying that you don't believe that guys who identify as girls shouldn't be able to compete against girls. I think that is 100% based, and it is the right way to think about the world. So just stand on what you believe. I don't understand why people feel like they got a pussyfoot to virtue signal to these types of people. You don't have to. You are 100% right. Transgender athletes should not be competing against girls and women if you want to preserve female sports.
I want to see that law enforced. And many federal district courts in our country have already held that this principle that gender identity can be used in place of sex is in direct conflict with the clear language of Title IX. So what CIF has done with these new revisions to their policies, it might mitigate damages that these female athletes otherwise would have had by being ousted by a male who is competing in a girls' competition. But what it doesn't do is get at the root of the problem. The root of the problem in California is AB 1266, which became Law Education Code Section 221.5F back in 2013. That law requires school districts to allow students to compete in the athletics and use the facilities that align with their gender identity instead of their sex.
Oh my gosh.
That is the root of the problem. That needs to be rescinded, and the state of California needs to stop enforcing that law if we are going to abide by Title IX. If California doesn't want to do that, fine, but they need to stop accepting federal funds.
So in California, if you're a boy that identifies as a girl by no metric, you could just go into the women's bathroom? What is going on in California? I swear, I used to live in California for a little bit when I was at the Olympic Training Center down in Chula Vista. And if California didn't have good weather, who would want to be in California? And I'm sure if you're from California, there's culture, you got family there, blah, blah, bloop. But I'm saying from the outside looking in, all you see is like $12 gas. You see homelessness running rampant. You see protests/riots in the streets. Hollywood is dead, and all you see is a bunch of gay shit. It's like, who would ever want to be? If California was switched with like Utah, nobody would be in California. But since there's just beautiful weather, people allow for these things to happen, and they live by these crazy rules that don't even reflect reality.
That's a condition. You have to comply with federal law to accept federal funds.
What would make this fair for her to compete, for those who are competing against her? What would that kind of structure in competition look like?
Who is her?
AB.
Okay, AB Hernandez is a male who identifies as a female.
Yeah, stand on business.
What would be fair is to have Hernandez competing in the male category. It is not fair to the females competing to have to compete with a male.
Right. We're not going to restructure our entire society for less than 1% of the population. Less than 1% of the population only has 1 foot, but when they go to Foot Locker, they still have to buy 2 shoes. It's because as a society, we've decided that we're not going to alter our entire society for less than 1% of the population.
Okay, so in Trump's federal funding threat, is that something, though, that would hurt all student athletes, including athletes who are assigned female at birth?
Would his federal funding threat hurt athletes?
If the money is taken away.
Right. So the law actually says that schools that do not abide Title IX or other federal laws cannot receive federal funds. So that's not Trump's fault. The problem is that the state with AB 1266.
But you understand, Julie,
so instead of blaming California for choosing not to follow the law and throwing its people under the bus by not getting the federal funding, they're just blaming the federal government for having the law in the first place.
You understand there's two views here on Title IX. So just to be clear, not everyone agrees with you on how you're viewing it. So in that regard, if you were to take away the funding on as it pertains to trans athletes, not everyone agrees with you. I think we just have to be clear about that. If you are taking away the funds for athletes, student athletes in California, isn't that going to hurt all of them?
Taking away federal funds is going to hurt all California kids, which is why the state of California needs to comply with federal law.
Right.
It's very simple.
Very simple.
So when you dig into the science on trans athletes, what is really clear is that there needs to be a lot more research on a lot more trans athletes to be able to draw better conclusions about the effect of whether gender-affirming care actually reduces or eliminates the advantage conferred on an athlete who is genetically male. Would you welcome more research? Is this a situation where more research might help
I absolutely think that more research and more careful and thoughtful discussion is necessary here.
Oh man.
Pediatric sex change procedures are very harmful and they
Yeah.
cause lifelong damage to children. And this is something that the United States of America needs to examine thoughtfully, and people need to be able to discuss openly without being called bigots and
Exactly. And I
transphobes.
like that pivot because she's 100% right. It's not about if we know that boys who identify as girls are going to be able to compete better. We know that for a fact. They have wider shoulders, bigger hands that equal a stronger grip strength. They're on average taller because they have the frame of a man. They have denser bones because men have denser bones. They have bigger lung capacity because men naturally have bigger lungs. They have more narrow hips that allows for them to shift left and right quicker, allows for stronger kicks because women have wider hips. That's actually one of the ways archaeologists can tell the difference between female remains and male remains. Women have wider hips for child rearing. And it means that they're going to have more knee issues when they have to do lateral movements. So there are a lot of disadvantages in that sense. So we don't need any science to show that boys have advantages when they compete against girls, especially at a certain age. But we definitely need more science done to talk about the detrimental effects that this has on children. And I genuinely believe that it's child abuse. People can say whatever they want. I personally believe that it's child abuse.
Yeah, totally hear you. So
Yeah, she's right.
There are obviously clear benefits to playing sports, to competing in sports. So when you're looking at an athlete like AB Hernandez, what would you have her do so that she can benefit from sporting?
I view AB Hernandez as the victim in this situation. I feel for him, and I feel that he has
Child
been lied
abuse.
to for his entire life.
Yeah.
And it's probably very destabilizing and difficult for him right now to realize that what he's been told is not actually reality. He cannot become a girl. What he can do is compete in the
Julie,
male
can we stick to
category.
Okay,
or
let's
if
stick to
CIF
sports. So you say compete in the male category or what?
Or if the state and CIF want to create a separate category
Exactly.
for people like AB Hernandez, and that's something that they want to do, fine. It is not fair to female athletes who have worked their entire lives for this kind of competition, who also, by the way, cannot speak out for fear of retaliation, which AB Hernandez's mother has personally threatened against them.
Whoa.
So it's very unfair for our girls and women in California to have to compete with males, have to share facilities with males, and then not be able to speak up about the unfairness because people are going to label them as bigots.
Yeah, she's 100% right. If you're a boy and you want to identify as a girl, that's fine. You can identify as whatever you want, but you don't get to compete in girl sports. You can compete in male sports, or you can wait till we have it so there's a transgender league, but you don't get to compete in female sports just because you identify as a girl. And by the way, shame on the people, and we should be blaming those people. We should be blaming the people who don't even believe in this stuff because they understand it's not objective reality, but to virtue signal, they try to act like society would accept this type of stuff. Society don't accept this stuff because it's not even a based in objective reality. And now you're starting to see people finally push back against it. And I'm happy to see that. And I think there needs to be more pushback more rapidly because we all know that this is wrong. This is no mystery, no surprise here. So yeah, she's right. If you want to identify as a girl, you waive your rights to compete. If I want to take steroids, I can do that, but I waive my rights to compete in international events, right? So it's going to be the same way if you decide to be a boy that wants to transition into being a girl. You waive your rights to compete. And if you identify as a girl so much so that it's a part of your identity and you need to do it, I don't think competing in women's sports is going to be the differentiator between whether you choose to go with what you feel like your gender is or whether you choose to stay the gender that you naturally are.